All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be looking at this really fascinating report from South Africa's Department of Basic Education. It gives us a raw, unfiltered look at a huge mission, trying to provide a quality education for every single child, especially those with disabilities. And as you're about to see, the gap between their goal and the reality on the ground was just staggering.
So, to really get a handle on the sheer scale of what South Africa was up against, we're not going to start with all the policy jargon or legal stuff. Nope, we're going to start with just one number. But trust me, this one number, it tells a huge part of the story. And here it is. Almost 600,000. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This figure, this is what lit a fire under everyone. This is what made this whole report so urgent. So, what exactly is this number? Yeah, that's the estimated number of South African kids with disabilities who were completely out of school back in 2015. We're talking about a group of children big enough to fill a major city, just not getting an education. This wasn't just some small problem to fix, it was an absolute crisis. And this was the mountain they had to climb. So, faced with a number like that, where do you even start? Well, South Africa actually had a blueprint, a really ambitious one that had been around for a while. It was called Education White Paper 6. Let's dig into what it was supposed to do. And you know, the thinking behind this plan was pretty revolutionary for its time. The idea wasn't just, hey, let's build more special schools. No way. The goal was to completely overhaul the entire education system, to stop dividing kids into mainstream and special, and create one single integrated system that could actually support everybody. It was all about knocking down the barriers that kept kids from learning. And you can see here just how they planned to do it. This wasn't a simple one-step fix. It was this layered approach. The idea was to transform special schools into resource centers, places that could help out the regular schools. Then you had these full-service schools, designed to handle a much wider range of learning needs. And the really critical part, building support teams at every level, from the district all the way down to the school itself, and making sure every single teacher got the right training. It was a really thought-out, top-to-bottom kind of plan. Okay, so that's the plan, right? Sounds great on paper, but by 2015, this plan had been in place for over 10 years. So what was actually happening in the real world? Well, the report's own data paints let's just say, a complicated picture. It's not exactly straightforward. Let's take a look. Right off the bat, the data shows something kind of weird, a real paradox. If you look at the number of kids in special schools, well, it jumped by almost 5,000 in just a single year. Now, your first thought might be, hey, that's great. More kids are getting access to the help they need. But it actually set off some major alarm bells. And here's why. The report itself flagged this as a huge problem. It basically says, look, while it's true more kids are getting into a school, they're getting pushed into segregated special schools. And that was the complete opposite of what the whole plan was about. The goal was inclusion and integration, not more separation. And then you see the other side of the story. And wow, it is just stark. At the exact same time that special school numbers were climbing, the number of kids with disabilities in regular public schools dropped by over 45,000. The report was really worried about this, suggesting that maybe mainstream schools were just pushing out kids they didn't know how to handle. This chart really drives the point home. You can see the divide so clearly. The data was showing that special schools were mostly taking in kids with intellectual disabilities. At the same time, the ordinary schools were mainly dealing with students who had specific learning disabilities or ADD. So you basically had two separate systems running in parallel for two different groups of kids, which is exactly the old divided model they were trying to get away from. So what you have is this picture of a system that's trying so hard to move forward, but it keeps getting dragged back by these old ways of doing things. And the report was super clear about why. It pointed to some really deep-seated system-wide problems that were just grinding everything to a halt. And these were the big ones. First off, nobody could agree on what inclusion even meant in practice. You'd ask people at different levels, you'd get different answers. Then there was the money. Funding and resources were all over the map, completely different from one province to another. Regular schools just didn't have the specialist support they needed. And get this, even the special schools were short-staffed. It was this massive struggle against real, everyday roadblocks. So, you've got this beautiful, clear vision for inclusion, crashing right into these huge, messy, real-world problems. And it makes you step back and ask a really basic question, right? Beyond all the policies and the data, why does this matter so much? What's the real endgame here? Well, the report brings it all home by tying this whole struggle to something way bigger than just education policy. It connects it to the very soul of the country, to the fundamental promise South Africa made to its people. And to really get what's at stake here, you have to see that this was never just about schools. It's about human rights. It's something woven deep into the fabric of the country's identity and its vision for the future. And this quote, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? This fight isn't just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's about giving people the tools they need to be full citizens, the tools to vote, to work, to live on their own terms, and to be a real part of their community. You see, education, it's the key that unlocks every other human right. So what this 2015 report does is give us this incredible, detailed snapshot of one moment in time on a very long and difficult road. It perfectly captures that massive gap between a powerful idea and a messy reality. And it leaves us with a really important question for today. Now, all these years later, how much of that gap has been closed? How much closer is South Africa to making that promise of education for all a reality?